Hey, this is Matt once again. Welcome back to another video. This is another paid request this time for NeoPunk. Thank you so much for that. And for those interested in requesting any type of videos or topics, commentaries, reviews, what have you, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or through my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. And he wanted me to do my top 15 favorite films of 1994. So let's get right into it. Number 15, I put Timecop. It's my favorite Stanner film. I like the Stanner's idea, but I've never been a fan of the first movie. I thought it was a pretty boring David Cronenberg film. I thought the lead guy was fairly terrible in it. Michael Ironside was good. Some of the effects were good, but that's pretty much it. But in Timecop, I like the lead guy. Sadly, he has passed away. He would go on to be in the sequel Stanners, The Showdown, aka Timecop 2. But yeah, I like the lead guy. I like the idea of you have this Stanner power, but it's a cop. So it's kind of like a little bit more of a violent superhero movie. Yeah, Richard Lynch is the villain, who is the villain in Invasion USA, among many other films. I still need to pick up the Vinegar Syndrome release, because I know there's that and the sequel that came out from them. Maybe one day down the road, but yeah, Timecop, I find an entertaining film. I like the concept. I like the couple of the gory effects. Wish there was a little bit more action. Wish there was a little bit more gore. But again, like the concept, like bits of the action. Richard Lynch is always good as a villain. Ever since I think I first saw him in Invasion USA, but various other films he had done. And like I said, I like the lead guy. It's too bad that he's passed away. Number 14, Terminal Velocity, with Charlie Sheen. This is a year we had a couple movies about skydiving. You had Drop Zone, Wesley Snipes, among others. Terminal Velocity I always thought was a fun, underrated action film where Charlie Sheen's playing a party guy, and the first scene is him parachuting down for a raunchy party, but he accidentally lands in the wrong place, so there's a bunch of moms and kids and stuff in there, and he landed in the wrong spot. I thought there were some pretty funny lines. I thought Charlie Sheen was very energetic and enjoyable. Long story short, in the plot, he's supposed to take a new lady down to show her. It's supposed to be her first time skydiving. They get separated. She dies. He doesn't understand what happened. He was with her, then she was gone. He knows there's something else going on, which there is. He's being framed for misconduct, but there's a lot more going on to it. You had Natasha Kinski in it. I believe James Gandolfini. I believe he's in it. You also have, I forget his real name, but it's Shooter McGavin from Happy Gilmore. He plays one of the villains. And there's some really good stunt work. I mean, there's a crazy stunt in the finale where you have a couple people skydiving along with a car as real people try and get to this car that's falling through the air. It's a pretty crazy stunt. There's another one that always reminds me of the big Die Hard 2. Charlie Sheen and Natasha are strapped to this contraption as going towards this dead end, and they eject. As they eject, the whole thing collides and explodes. So it has some pretty fun set pieces. Remember quite a bit of witty, funny dialogue that Charlie Sheen gets to say. They play in the fact that this character is not an action hero, so he tries to shoot a gun. He doesn't realize that it's on safety. He's confused. He doesn't get what's going on. Pack your bags. We're going on a guilt trip. Like I said, it's one of those films that Never really got it. Maybe it was a box office flop. Critics didn't like it, but I always thought it was a bit underrated. Number 13, Airheads. Funny movie. You got Brendan Fraser. Seemingly, you had everybody at the time in this movie. Brendan Fraser, Steve Buscemi, Adam Sandler, Chris Farley's in the film. Michael McKean's in the film. David Arquette is in the film. Harold Ramis has a small part in it. Ernie Hudson is a small part of it. Even Beavis and Butthead have a small voice part in it. A lot of familiar faces in that movie. It's about three guys that are in a rock band. They want to get known. They just want their tape played. So when things go wrong, they pretend to take it over. They have guns that are not really guns, but they're toy guns with hot sauce in it. And rebellious people trying to get their shot at the airwaves. The cast worked well together. Brendan Fraser was just coming up after doing films like Encino Man. This is before, I think this is before Joe of the Jungle, definitely before The Mummy. Adam Sandler, this is very early in his career. I mean, this is before he would do Billy Madison and Happy Gilmore. Steve Buscemi, again, very young in his career. This is around the time he was doing, I think this is even before, like, Desperado, and I think he had been in Reservoir Dogs. So a lot of people early on in their career, and it's a film it was on Blu-ray, but it's not on Blu-ray anymore, and I don't know why someone has not put that out on Blu-ray again. Because you look at Brendan Fraser, what's going on with his career, and the Oscar win, Adam Sandler, how popular he is, you look at the cast, it was on Blu-ray before, like no one's thought, hey, let's get the rights to this, release it, maybe put a special edition out. Hey, whatever. Now, number 12, I put In the Army Now. Another film that's not on Blu-ray. Now, believe it or not, back to the day, I was a Pauly Shore fan. Back to the day, I did like films, and still do, films like Encino Man, Son-in-Law, and In the Army Now. In the Army Now was actually my favorite. I know it's not as funny as Stripes, in terms of military comedies, but I thought Pauly Shore and Andy Dick actually worked well together. I got some easy chuckles and laughs out of it. I liked Lori Petty. I liked, oh, what's his name? David Alan Grier. Brendan Fraser has a cameo in it. It's definitely one of those films I remember watching a lot when I was a kid. To the point I remember at the beginning is them playing a video game and arcade game, and you just hear Pauly Shore and Andy Dick commenting on it. If you're not into Pauly Shore shtick, I don't know how much you would get out of it, but it had enough of a budget that you could tell it was a theatrical release. Yeah, it's one of those films that I did quite enjoy and had a lot of fun with. I thought it was a pretty funny movie, so wish it would get a Blu-ray. Number 11, Pulp Fiction. I mean, it's Pulp Fiction. What more can be said about Pulp Fiction? Tarantino's direction, resurgence of John Travolta, you got Samuel Jackson, you got Bruce Willis, a lot of familiar people in that movie. Christopher Walken. Definitely one of Tarantino's best films, Pulp Fiction. I mean, I don't have to speak for Pulp Fiction. Everyone knows Pulp Fiction. Number 10, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Nowadays, a lot of people downplay this sequel, but I always thought it was a very clever, interesting, creative way of doing a sequel to a known franchise. Of course, a precursor to Scream with the meta stuff. But I've always enjoyed Wes Craven's New Nightmare. It's one of my favorite entries of that franchise. I love the Elm Street franchise. The only ones I really hate is Elm Street 5 and the remake. But yeah, Wes Craven's New Nightmare, I always thought was. I liked seeing Heather Langenkamp back. It was interesting to see a different take on Freddy Krueger. It was nice to see Wes Craven in there playing himself, because I miss the guy. Rest in peace to Wes Craven. I thought it had some really nice beats to the score. It was playing to the first movie, but at the same time doing its own thing, with a little bit of this Alice in Wonderland, or Hansel and Gretel, with the witch's house and the crumbs, and it definitely had like a fairy tale aspect. I mean, yeah, I'm not big on the little kid's performance. He's done better in other movies. I don't think it's the actor's fault. It's just some of the things they made him do made him a little bit annoying at times. Also, the finale, there's some effects that do not hold up the best when they're in the dream world. There's a dated, special effects shots. I will admit that, but I really appreciate his imagination, and like I said, I thought Heather Langenkamp did a good job, and I mean, I know it's her playing herself, but I would say it's her best performance. As I said, it was nice to see the faces behind, like Robert Englund playing himself, same with Bob Shea, Wes Craven, and I'm like, wow, this is a very inventive sequel to bring new, fresh blood into the proceedings. So, always liked Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Number 9, Dumb and Dumber. Very funny movie. From the very beginning, Austria. Let's have another trip in the Barbie. So it doesn't know that Australia and Austria is not the same thing. It's just the various jokes that were made, but at the same time, for the most part, the characters seem endearing, which was not the case in the sequel. In the sequel, it was a lot more. There's something about Mary type of jokes. There's much more gross out humor. Like, my least favorite bit in Dumb and Dumber is the toilet scene. I know people love that. I don't. I pretty much skip that part. It's the one joke in Dumb and Dumber 2 that felt like a joke in this film was when they had the letter and they went to the address, but they realized they went in a circle because on the letter they looked at the wrong address. Like, that felt like something from the original. Like, it's dumb, but it's kind of clever, and that's what the first film was more concentrated on, jokes like that. Yeah, once in a while you had the Ton Gag, Frozen, which was, funny enough sight gag. Like, one of the funniest bits in Dumb and Dumber is when Jim Carrey's leaving and he sees the moon landing in old newspaper. Wow. We landed on the moon! That's what made the first Dumb and Dumber enjoyable. And those two worked well together, which was sadly not the case in Dumb and Dumber 2. But I still think the first Dumb and Dumber is one of my favorite Jim Carrey films. Number 8, Men of War, one of my favorite Dolph Lundgren films. Definitely one of his most underrated. Should have gotten a theatrical release, but it did not. It did, I think, overseas, but not in the U.S. Because Dolph Lundgren's films were bombing. I Come in Peace bombed, Showdown in Little Tokyo bombed. Universal Soldier did well, but Van Damme was the star. So they thought, well, Dolph Lundgren can't sell movies. He can't sell pictures. I guess sadly they had a point, because again, I Come in Peace and Showdown in Little Tokyo, they're damn good movies, but they didn't do anything, so. Dolph, I would say, is the most underrated action star. He has a lot of good slate of action movies, and it was always bad luck. Always fucking bad luck. Because Red Scorpion, there were issues of getting that released. The Punisher, Roger Corman's company at the time went bankrupt, so I had to go straight to video. Showing Little Tokyo, there was some shenanigans going on, so it was only released in like 100 and some theaters, if that. But Men of War, it's pretty much Dolph's hired by these guys. He gets together a team of mercenaries. They go to this island. They're supposed to tip the people out. You come to find out that there's certain elements on the island that these guys want to excavate. As silly as it sounds, there's certain birds there and their bird poo. And even Dolph does, you want me to kill people for bird shit? You done it for far less. But there are elements in the certain species, just like other elements. And it's a very lush production, slick looking production. You got Charlotte Lewis from The Golden Child. You got Tiny Lister Jr. from Friday. He was Debo. May he rest in peace. You got the guy who played Kano in the 95 Mortal Kombat film. May he rest in peace. He plays a very fun villain. You got some great action scenes. You got a fucking bazooka, like blowing up pieces of village to kill off the bad guys. You got a good one-on-one fist fight with the bad guy in this cave system. Welcome to hell. Or he thinks he'd go get the guy with the skull, but it's so bristle. Not a skull, but like a bone, like a hatchet, actually. But it's so brittle, it just breaks easily. And he's like, fuck. And the bad guy kicks him. Great action scenes, wonderful scenery of this island, beautiful island. Such an underrated Dolph Lundgren film if you've never seen Men of War. One of the drafts of the script was actually written by John Sayles. Easily one of Dolph's best and most underrated movies, Men of War. Deserves a good, solid Blu-ray in the US. Number 7, True Lies. Another film not on Blu-ray. True Lies is an awesome film. It's Arnold getting to do James Bond. James Cameron had the ability to get the budget behind it, so you get extraordinary action sequences. The bathroom shootout fight. The having a fucking fighter jet and shooting the shit out of a whole floor of a building. Arnold getting the thing and having a fucking flamethrower. Diving out of the way of this explosion and swimming under the water. Just crazy, excellent set pieces. I'm not big on Jamie Lee Curtis as I once was, but she does do a pretty decent job as his wife. Tom Arnold, I never minded Tom Arnold like other people did, so it was nice to see him there as Arnold's buddy. Charlton Heston has a cameo. Nowadays it's frowned upon because terrorism isn't funny. Well, didn't think terrorism was funny. The comedy is more about Arnold and his wife not knowing what he truly does in his life. And Bill Paxton's character, which he's a lot of fun in it. I mean, he has one of Arnold's better lines, "You're fired," and shoots a damn bad guy attached to a missile into a helicopter. I mean, that's pretty damn badass. And really the last James Cameron film I liked and loved. Because I don't like Titanic. I don't like Avatar. Don't care about the sequel. But True Lies is damn good. And because James Cameron wants to have this, and this, still doesn't have a Blu-ray, just like The Abyss. Probably one of the reasons why he doesn't get talked about as much, because wasn't a whole lot of physical media for nowadays for people to see it. And then what, they did a TV show, but then okay. You have a TV, whatever. Can't get a Blu-ray, but you want to do a TV show. That makes a lot of sense. Number 6, personal favorite of mine, Death Machine. That's one of those films that, when a film's able to do a lot of low budget, it impresses me. Death Machine is one of them. I heard that Tino Lorber or someone else is doing a Blu-ray of it. Be nice to see if they actually do release it. Because I remember they said they were going to release her 4K Leviathan, the 1989 film, and that was like over a year ago, and there's been zero word on it. But Death Machine, Stephen Norrington, who would go on to direct Blade. Pretty much it takes place in this one building, takes place a little bit in the future. There's a weapon facility program within the building. Brad Dourif is the crazy scientist inventor, and pretty much he's going to get fired, and he says fuck that, releases the weapon. It's this metal beast. You know, the Death Machine is this metal beast that will chop the shit out of you, like this grinder machine, but looks like a beast. You know, all made of metal. And I thought they had some really good inventive set pieces because of the budget. Tearing through room after room, we see its POV. It definitely has a bit of has a quirky sense of humor, which might not sit right with everybody. It doesn't always work, but sometimes it does. Like, you have these kind of environmentalist type eco-terrorist guys that go in to try to figure out what's going on, and they could be pretty funny. I was entertained by them. I like the lead guy, Ellie Pogo. I can never pronounce her last name, but I thought she was a strong lead. Brad Dourif's always fun, whether playing a hero or a villain. I think the look of the Death Machine looks cool, done practically. I've seen a lot of this done practically, and gets to the point where they get this big, massive guns, and they're shooting the shit out of it, and they're either being attacked in an elevator, or they gotta get this hardware suit on one of the characters, and it sinks into his brain. And this really becomes like an anime where there's a bit where the lead and this guy are in a hallway, and the third person comes out in the suit. He's able to fire these missiles that goes right past him, and you see the POV of the missile hit the creature, and done practically, it's blown all the way back through a wall, like through an elevator. There's been when they're outside on an elevator, and she's shooting the shit out of it as it's trying to come down onto this. Like I say, it's one of those movies that deserves a bit more of a cult following. I think that if people see it, they would get a kick out of it. It may seem a bit slow in the beginning, but when it kicks in the gear, it really kicks in the gear, and it really becomes a fun roller coaster ride throughout the rest of the movie. So, like I said, the quirky humor doesn't always work. The first third of the film people might find a bit slow, but I think it's worth it. That's a film I was told by my friends Mike and Effrey about, and I always like the cover. There's like a metal claw coming out, like looked like Mercury. I always thought that was a cool, simple but cool design, and quite enjoyed it. It was a nice surprise. Number 5, The Shawshank Redemption. Shawshank Redemption's classic. I mean, I always talk about how that's one of my favorite films. Tim Robbins, Morgan Freeman. That's a long film that doesn't feel long to me. It's emotional. It's endearing in terms of giving you hope. If you want a movie that made you believe in hope, that's a movie to do it in. Bob Gunton is just a guy you just want to hate as the warden. Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman worked very well together. Has a beautiful score. Frank Darabont knocked out of the park with The Shawshank Redemption. And as much as I do like Forrest Gump. It's not on the list, but I do like it. I do think Shawshank Redemption should have won the Best Picture Oscar. I know some would say Pulp Fiction, but in my opinion, it would have been The Shawshank Redemption that won the Oscar for Best Picture. That's just me, though. Number 4, Timecop. Definitely one of my favorite Van Damme films. This should have been the Van Damme franchise. Stallone had Rocky and Rambo. Arnold had Terminator. For Van Damme, should have been Timecop. And I think instead of The Quest 2, I think instead of The Quest, that should have been like Timecop 2. Should have been a sequel to this as part of the deal. Because, you had Street Fighter and this. Street Fighter didn't do well, but this did. And then you had Sudden Death and The Quest. The Quest should not have been part of that deal, and it should have been a Timecop 2. There was a Timecop 2 with Jason Scott Lee that was direct to video, but I'm not really a fan of that one. It's based on a comic book, so it is a comic book movie. Ron Silver, always great to have him as a bad guy. And the premise, a cop that catches bad guys through time. Just the possibilities are endless of what you could do with that premise. I thought Van Damme did a good job here. Physically, you got him doing the splits, avoiding being electrocuted. Yeah, nice little story about what happened to his wife, played by the lady who was in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Mia Sara. I like the guy who plays his boss, which he's been in a lot of stuff. He was in The Last Boy Scout. He's been in a lot of stuff. I forget his name. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I like the contraptions of how they get back through time. There's that shot where he goes back and then he's on the middle of the road and he has to flatten down so he doesn't get run over. I'm still kicking. I must be on Broadway. There's some nice standout moments. There's a bit where there's a bad guy. He's able to freeze the bad guy's part of his arm and side, and Van Damme kicks it off because it's been frozen, so it breaks off. And it's a cool idea. Entertaining action pieces. Van Damme at the top of his game. Ron Silver makes it worth it as a bad guy. Has some nice emotion to it with what happened to his wife, that whole little backstory. And the ability to be able to change time for the better. Nice sweet ending. Some fun bits of humor early on where there's a guy trying to steal something. Van Damme puts his foot in front of his face. What's it say? And then the guy reads it. No, between the lines. I should get the fuck out of here? Yeah. And it's written by Peter Hyams, who's a very capable director. This is a guy who did 2010, The Year We Made Contact, Stay Tuned with John Ritter, End of Days with Arnold Schwarzenegger, The Relic. Definitely in my top 10 favorite directors. Outland with Sean Connery, which I love. So Timecop, they said, should have been his franchise. Number 3, Ace Ventura Pet Detective. It's one of my favorite comedies. It's my favorite Jim Carrey film. I watched that incessantly on VHS tape. And I will say this. I could still watch that film and laugh my ass off. It was Jim Carrey, full energy, sort of his make it or break it deal. I'm going to go for it. It's a ridiculous concept, but if you want to see a movie that makes a guy a star, Ace Ventura Pet Detective does that. I have exorcised the demons, or the whole bit with the crying game song and how that comes into play. Which I'm sure people frown about that now because they'll say it's an ist or obic, phobic type of thing. It's a joke. You got Dan Marino in the film. You got Tone Loc in the film. Just a funny fucking film. It's crazy that that film does not have like a full-blown special edition. I mean, the Cable Guy has more of a special edition than Ace Ventura Pet Detective. It got released. I think there's maybe a commentary and maybe a few episodes of the cartoon, but that's it. I mean, if you feel like that film should have gotten a lot more of a special edition. That's just me, though. I know Jim Carrey did a commentary for Cable Guy. You think he would do one for Ace Ventura, but I guess not. He seems proud of it. At one point, he wanted to do a third one, which it's a bit too late for that. Although I do like the second movie. Number two, it's also crazy that film was a lot more violent. Like the bit at the end where there's the two guys and he drops the hook. Originally, he did take their heads off, and you saw it. And then Ace Ventura has his look on his face, and then he makes a run for it. I can see why they took that out. That is pretty dark. Sorry I phased out there, but like, what happened? Did the video freeze? No. Number two is just, it's Clerks, and the reason I paused so long is just a bit sad about where Kevin Smith is nowadays in terms of the movies he made and the decisions he makes. And number two is Clerks, because Clerks is still one of my favorite comedies of all time. I can watch that movie and I appreciate its simplicity. Randall and Dante, the way Brian O'Halloran and the way those two guys worked with each other, the chemistry they had with each other, how you're able to make such a funny movie based strictly on dialogue and dialogue alone. Still the fun conversations, whether it be about the Death Star or all sorts of other stuff. Its rough and tumble quality actually makes it a bit endearing to me. The black and white taking place just in a convenience store, almost like a reflection back to simpler times before Kevin Smith, I don't know, before he started making decisions like, I'm going to help make a He-Man cartoon where I kill off He-Man, and then Tila is pissed that He-Man, even though saved everybody's lives, but you didn't tell me. And then He-Man comes back. Or let's make Clerks 3 and we kill off Dante. Because that's such a great idea to kill off Dante. And the way it's done, and it'll make jokes about NFTs. And it'll make that a running gag. I'm like, where did the Kevin Smith of old go? Like, if you took the Kevin Smith that was at this time, I think he would be puzzled by the Kevin Smith of today. You say that's progress, you say people change, but like I said, I think, to me, it's a downgrade. I would say that of his career. And I just still watch Clerks at the end, laugh. And you look at that ending, as strange as it is, it's kind of sweet. Where the day ends, either shit or get off the pot. Randall gives him some tough love encouragement. You're closed. great song. I can't even tell. It gives a sense of hope. And then Kevin Smith dashes that. As if, oh, you're that slacker guy and you thought there'd be hope. Which you fully agree with in Clerks 2 with the way that ended. You just dash people's thought processes on that. Going, nah, you were wrong. That slacker who you thought you were Dante, you thought you were this and that, nah, that ain't gonna work. That ain't how it's gonna be. You're not gonna get out of that hole. You're not gonna get out of those hurdles. Instead, your wife's gonna die, your baby who hasn't even been born yet is gonna die. You're gonna make this movie and have a horrible time because your best bud treats you like crap. And then you're gonna have a heart attack. And then, hey, remember this movie that we're working on and I treated you like shit? Let me show you the movie. And then you're gonna die. Because you give up on life. And people said this is such a great way to end that character in that franchise. Please explain it to me. But the first Clerks still works in my opinion. And number one with a bullet is Speed. Keanu Reeves. The film that made him a star. Yes, he had done films like Point Break. He had done films like Bill and Ted films. Bill and Ted films, I think, brought him to the dance, but this is a film that made him a star. Just a few years later, you had the Matrix films, and then sometime later, you had the John Wick films. Speed, some would say Point Break. To me, it was Speed that showed that he could do action films. Genius concept. You have a bus. If it goes below 50 miles per hour, it blows up. You gotta keep it above 50 to stay alive. You get some really intense, great set pieces, a lot of good practical work and stunt work. Whether it be from Keanu Reeves' character getting from the car to the bus, whether it be all the sharp turns and close calls. Dennis Hopper's having a lot of fun as the villain. Jeff Daniels gives good support for Keanu Reeves. Sandra Bullock is plucky and likable and enjoyable and not annoying and not irritating. By this point, she had done Demolition Man. But I would say this is the film that definitely made her a star as well. Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock worked very well together. They had great chemistry. They had a wonderful score by, I want to say, Mark Mancina. And it's a movie where that is a true roller coaster movie. You have the elevator beginning, then you have the whole bus, and then you have the subway sequence. And just a thrill ride. Just a fucking thrill ride. And I do have the 4K Blu-ray combo. Not a lot for new features, and that's a film that just, again, boggles my mind that doesn't have, like... That's one of those movies that deserve, like, a brand new, to the gills interviews. But who's going to talk about the film? Keanu Reeves doesn't really do a lot of interviews, except maybe for the Matrix stuff. As I'm doing this, I know he's going to be on Scott Adkins' Art of Action. So I guess during that he'll talk about Speed, I would assume. Sandra Bullock doesn't really do interviews, at least on Blu-rays and stuff. Dennis Hopper's passed away. I think Jeff Daniels at first he thought the movie would be junk, and he was surprised by the result of it. That's a movie I could watch today and still be thrilled and excited. What do you do? What do you do? Pop quiz, hotshot. Love Speed. The film Speed. I should be taking Speed. But the film Speed to me is a fucking classic. classic action film, classic 90s action film. It had the right idea, ingenious idea, had the right cast, two people that made stars, Keanu Reeves, Sandra Bullock, very fun villain, great action set pieces, stunt sequences. Yes, the bus jump is ridiculous, would never happen in real life, but you made me believe in all these other elements. I could take a leap of faith with a scene like that, because I've been enjoying the rest of your movie that much. So there you go. So with that said, thanks for watching. Take care. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.